but we'll do our best to hear from all of you. And I have someone timing the 3 minutes, and you will hear him say 1 minute to go. After you've spoken for 2 minutes, he'll say 1 minute to go. And at the end of that time, he'll say time. And we'll have to cut off your mic, or we'll ask you to complete your sentence or one more sentence so that we can get through as many people as possible. So do we have Sheriff Masahos from Rockingham County in the queue? And can we bring him up to be the first speaker?
Mr. Chairman Weiler, I don't see him yet, but I do have the first name on the list.
All right, then we'll hear from Kathy Spinney.
I'm sorry, I apologize. The second name is Leslie Want.
She's ready to speak. Welcome to the New Hampshire House.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much for hearing my testimony. This is the first time I've gotten in, being one of the first people to testify. So thank you very much. I am the vice chair of the school board here in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I wanted to just sort of make the committee aware of some of the challenges that the school district faces here in Manchester. As you know, because of the fewer number of students due to COVID-19, we will be losing some money coming to us because of the amount of money given per student. And that, I'm just looking at my thing here. I wasn't expecting to be called so soon. We're looking at a retirement increase of $2.5 million. We're looking at a reduction in fewer students of $1.2 million and a $4 million decrease in funding due to the free lunch applications. And so that's a total of $7.8 million lost to the Manchester School District students over this coming year. And so I would ask you please to take all of that into consideration as you put your budget together this year, and anything you can do to forego those cuts to us this year would be very helpful. As you know, Manchester has a great number of students with a lot of need. We have a greater percentage of students with free reduced lunch than any other district in the state. We also have the highest number of EL learners. So we have a lot of needs here, and certainly the pandemic has increased those needs tremendously. And this is not the year to cut our budget. So anything you can do to help out Manchester would be in this budget would be greatly appreciated. And I think that wraps it up for me. And I wanted to say that originally I signed up opposed to this bill, but I clicked the wrong button. So that was a mistake. I'm strongly in support of anything you can do to help out our education system here in Manchester.
Thank you for your testimony. We've been given word that there is more money coming, but what we are restricted by now is what the Ways and Means Committee gave us for revenue estimates, which was quite a bit lower than what the governor had. And we have got to pass a budget that fits within the figures that the Ways and Means Committee gave us. However, there is hope that more money is coming from the CARES Act. We don't know when it will arrive, but hopefully that'll help everything. Thank you very much for your testimony. We'll next hear from Leslie Warren.
Mr. Chair, Sheriff Masahos is available.
You say the sheriff is available? Let's hear from him.
Yes, I'm promoting him to the panel.
Sheriff Masahos.
Sheriff, you need to unmute yourself.
Yep. Okay, can you hear me?
Okay.
Hear you.
Yes, you can.
I was trying to figure it out. I just thank you for acknowledging me. I'm Sheriff Masahos. I am the sheriff of the Rockingham County Sheriff's Office. I oppose this bill, and I'm going to defer to Sheriff Riccardi on the speaking points about this bill. Thank you.
Good to hear from you, Sheriff. And just within the hour almost, we passed an amendment to the section that you and I have discussed in HB2 which we hope will solve the problem going forward as well, because we've had this problem in the past. So we've shifted some funding and we're pretty sure that we've solved the problem. Thank you for coming.
Great. Thank you, Representative Wilder, for you looking into this matter. And we definitely do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, this is Representative Walls. I just want to alert the clerk that I've joined the meeting.
Representative Walls.
Yes, I just wanted to alert the clerk I've joined the meeting.
Wanted to know what?
I want to alert the clerk that I have joined the meeting.
Oh, thank you very much, because we missed you in the attendance. Thank you for letting us know. Appreciate it. All right. Who do we have next on the list?
Well, if we had Sheriff Riccardi, I'd like him to raise his hand if possible, so we can find him. If not, we have, next on the list is Kathy Spinney.
All right, let's bring her in.
Ms. Spinney, are you available? If not, Elizabeth O'Neill is next. And if you are available, please raise your hand. Star 9 if you are on the phone. I apologize, we have a lot of folks on here.
That's quite a list to look through.
Okay, the next name I'll call is James Donchett.
All right. James Donchett, the mayor.
James
Let's bring him
Donchett,
up if
if
he's
you're
available.
available. No. Okay. Next on the list, Nancy Kelleher.
All right, is she available?
Mr. Chairman, a lot of the names, who's ever making the call outs, their hands are being raised. Matter of fact, Elizabeth O'Neill is up there.
I see Sheriff Riccardi, so he has raised his hand, and I will promote him to panelist.
Okay, who do we have next?
So this is Sheriff Riccardi. Please unmute yourself. There he is.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon, Sheriff.
dear Chairman Weiler and members of the committee. My name is Dominic Ricciardi. I'm the High Sheriff of Carroll County. I've served in law enforcement for 32 years, and that includes 8+ years as the High Sheriff in Carroll County. I'm currently the president of the Sheriff's Association in New Hampshire, which obviously includes 10 sheriffs. I am here to testify in opposition of Section 1. I know that you just stated there is an amendment made, but we have not seen it yet, so I would still like to submit the opposition on record. For the reimbursements of Sheriff's Office on behalf of the New Hampshire Sheriff's Association. We respectfully ask that you delete the section in the proposed HB2, which regards the RSA 104:31, Roman numerals 10 and 11, and section 12 that's been added. This would drastically reduce the rate of pay that has provided sheriff's bailiffs with judicial budget. This amendment would possibly reduce the per diem rate from the current 108 to the rate of 2016 of $80. The rates currently established in the judicial budget are equal to those of the New Hampshire AOC court security officers, whom the bailiffs work alongside of in many of the courts around the state. This agreement was made by the collective bargaining unit of the AOC in the judicial branch. Some counties do provide a subsidy on top of the current rate, attempt to employ adequate number of employees, which we need to provide under RSA 104.5, number 3. States the bailiffs shall provide, or the sheriffs shall provide adequate security in all state courts, except the Supreme Court. We are all having trouble to find current bailiffs to work this. This would be about a 26.47% rate cut if this were to pass. This proposed bill could force sheriffs to place full-time deputies in the courts and to provide the adequate security needed. And it would be cost to the taxpayers in the state and the counties. And also possibly lose police services around the towns that have no police in these counties. We respectfully ask that this section and amendments be removed from HB2, as we see it as a cost shift to the counties and detriment to the bailiffs. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Sheriff. We did pass an amendment about an hour ago that will be publicized soon, and you will get a look at it when it's available on the LBA website, an amendment to Section 1 of HB2. And we believe it has solved the problem. And as you point out, it's been a long-standing problem. Going forward, we think we fixed it. So take a look at that. We've changed where the fund sources were and things like that. So we think we fixed everything. We hope we can go back to camera arraignments again, but we've got to convince the court of that. That should save a lot of transportation money that you have to spend. So take a look at it. We think we fixed it. Thank you for coming before us.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Who do we have
Mr.
now?
Chair, we have the Nashua Mayor.
All right, Mayor Donchett.
You could unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for hearing me. I'm here to testify, I guess, in opposition of the bill because of the $73 million gap in education funding between the last fiscal year and the fiscal year coming up. This is the worst time to hit school districts across the state with this funding gap, because the challenges caused by the pandemic are really unprecedented. A lot of kids who have tried to learn remotely and all of the problems associated with that. Also, it really, the loss in education aid reflects some artificial reductions in the free and reduced lunch kids and in attendance. Those are the two main drivers of the reduction in the education costs.
2 minutes.
The free and reduced lunch reduction has been caused by the fact that the Department of Agriculture, federal, made all lunches free. So there's no real incentive anymore there's certainly much less incentive for families to qualify for free and reduced lunch. We know that low-income families, moderate-income families have been hit very hard by the pandemic. We think that there are more free and reduced lunch qualifiers, but that people just haven't filled out the paperwork. So that's an artificial reduction. Also, the reduction in enrollments is also artificial. I'm just telling you Nashua's experience because I think it's typical. Almost all the reduction comes from the pre-K and kindergarten levels, where when the schools were remote, they've moved into hybrid now, but when they were remote, there was no particular, it was easy for a parent to say, look, I'm not going to send my kid to a remote kindergarten or a remote pre-K. So that caused an artificial reduction there. This comes at the same time when state retirement costs have been elevated for all cities and towns very dramatically. So this hit on the property taxpayers is one that I don't believe can be afforded, and I'm hoping you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee will at least equalize the education aid for the coming year with the coming fiscal year with the current fiscal year until we work out these pandemic-related problems. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. We're aware of that problem. We've heard about it several times. This is only on March 16th. This budget won't be completed until sometime in June. There is some possibility of more funds coming in the CARES Act, and some of them will be dedicated to education. In the interim, we don't have that much money for what's been asked, but we're hoping that there'll be some in that. And also, if in fact, the revenue picture improves, which some people think, March and April being big months for revenue, then we will have more figures to work with, but we're stuck with what the figures we got in February. So, but I'm looking forward to rosy days, and hopefully we're all are.
Well, hopefully they will come. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Who do we have next?
The next name I see on the list promoting is Ken Norton.
Okay, Kenneth Norton, all right.
Thank you, Chairman Weiler and members of the committee. My name is Kenneth Norton, and I'm the Executive Director of NAMI New Hampshire, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Our mission is to improve the lives of all people impacted by mental illness and/or suicide. During Governor Sununu's budget address, he once again stated that New Hampshire is in a mental health crisis. And I'm here to ask you to fully fund mental health services as proposed in the governor's budget. The crisis has been exacerbated by the pandemic, with significant increases in stress, anxiety, and depression across all ages, though particularly impacting children and youth. The most visible symptom of is the boarding of individuals in a mental health crisis in emergency departments while waiting for an inpatient bed. This is a practice NAMI New Hampshire has long described as wrong medically, legally, ethically, morally, and economically. During the past month, we've exceeded previous highs of the numbers of people being boarded, with 51 children being boarded on February 14th. And a combined high of 89 children and adults on February 17th. Emergency department boarding is the tip of the proverbial iceberg relative to timely access to mental health care. There are long waits for outpatient treatment as well. Workforce shortages pose an ongoing challenge to addressing this crisis, and fully funding the state's loan repayment program is critical to addressing mental health and other health-related fields. Suicide continues to be a significant public health issue in our state as well, with suicide being the second leading cause of death after accidental injury in New Hampshire for those ages 10 through 34. We anticipate that the mental health impacts of the pandemic will continue for some time to come and will impact children, parents, older adults, and across many sectors of our workforce. We're already seeing evidence of this. We must continue the work begun during the 2019 legislative session of implementing the key recommendations of the 2019 10-year mental health plan. This includes continuing to focus on developing a continuum of community-based services for mental health crisis response, step up and step down services, inpatient and outpatient capacity, supported housing, peer support, suicide prevention, and substance use disorder services. We must also move ahead with building a new forensic hospital in order to end the practice of people with mental health conditions who have not been charged with crimes being transferred to the Department of Corrections and the Secure Psychiatric Unit. It's imperative that we continue to prioritize mental health funding in order to address the mental health crisis we're in. Fully funding community-based services and supports as proposed will reduce costs and human impact on child protective services, juvenile justice, education, courts, and corrections, and other key areas. Lastly, as a member of the Governor's Law Enforcement Accountability, Community, and Transparency Commission, I offer my strong support for fully funding police standards and training as included in the budget. Thank you all to the Finance Committee members for your hard work and your service to our state.
Thank you for your testimony. We have discussed some of these problems with the HHS to find that they're having hiring problems and as well as space problems. We've had these things ongoing, as you know, for quite a while, and we're hoping that we can fix it, but it's going to be a little bit longer term than any of us would like, but we're hoping for better things in future. And thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
All right, who do we have next?
Mr. Speaker, this is Representative Walls. I just got a call on a landline from somebody saying Miss Finney's been called, but apparently they couldn't unmute her or something, and that she's still there with her hand up, and they asked that I relay that to you. So I'm just relaying what came in on a landline. It's a Miss Finney.
Does she have her hand up?
That's what they told me, yes.
Star 9, do you know if she is not sure if she is fired tablet? Unidentified.
Nancy, you know as much as I do. I'm just relaying what came in on the call. I'm sorry I don't have that.
Do we have the name, Representative Walls?
Yes, it was a Finney, maybe
Kathy. Yeah, if she's the only unidentified hand up right I see right now is fire tablet. I can promote that that individual. I don't know who it is.
Does she do, is it *6 to raise your hand when you're on a phone?
It's *6 to unmute. This is Fire Tablet.
How do you get attention? *6 unmutes, but how do you get attention?
Raise your hand, *9. That was a raise.
Raise your hand, *6.
Hello?
This is Fire Tablet. Can you please identify yourself?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you please identify yourself?
Yes, this is Kathy Spinney from Pelham, New Hampshire.
Very good. I apologize, ma'am. Please go ahead.
That's okay. This is new to all of us, I'm sure.
Spell your last name. Spell your last name.
Spinney.
Thank you.
I'm calling to ask the committee to, I'm in favor of HB1, particularly all the line items under the Bureau of Developmental Services. I'm asking you to support fully funding those, and if you're feeling, generous, increasing those amounts. I am the parent of a 39-year-old adult young woman with developmental disabilities, significant disabilities. She requires full care. My angle on this is I'm 63 years old now. She's getting very heavy to carry around. And I don't anticipate that my physical ability is going to improve. So more and more and more, the demands of her care needs to fall to staff. She's got wonderful staff, but they're getting older too. And I'm sure you're all aware of the workforce shortage we have, because we just can't pay people enough, or we haven't been paying people enough to become direct support professionals and do this very challenging work. So one of the things that I worry about as I'm getting older is what in the name of heaven is going to happen to my daughter when I'm not here anymore to provide the many hours that I still do provide in addition to working full time. We really need to fund these services and consider giving direct support professionals enough of a living wage to attract people to the field. That's one of the biggest problems that we have implementing services our loved ones are eligible for. So again, I'm asking you to fully fund the line items under developmental services and increase them if you can. Thank you.
HHS has told us one of the biggest problems is finding space and finding people, but we'll be working on that continuously. But thank you for pointing it out. Who do we have next?
Mr. Chair, there are a number of people with their hands up that I would like to ask to please lower their hand unless they've been called already, because that's making it very difficult to locate folks that are on the list. So please lower your hand unless you've been called. We have called the name of Elizabeth O'Neill. Elizabeth, if you're there, please raise your hand. If not, Jillian Doucette. Jillian, if you're there, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, please raise your hand with *9. If not, we have Nancy Kelleher. Nancy Kelleher. If not, we have Jackie Cowell. I believe I saw her name as available. There she is. Thank you, Jackie. We'll promote you to panelist. One moment. There she is. Jackie, please unmute. There you go. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. Hi. So I'm Jackie Cowell. I'm from Early Learning, New Hampshire, and I'll be really brief. And I'm talking about page 950 of the budget around childcare. So it is under Health and Human Services. It is the 2977 Child Development Program, to be specific. And it is class 536 employment related childcare. So I'm asking for you to please consider putting enough money in this line item to be sure that we don't start a wait list for folks who are lower income and need this little bit of state assistance to afford childcare to keep working. This is the very specifically for folks who are income eligible right now. They're working hard and they need this childcare. The governor's budget does propose a cut of up to 20% here. And the department has explained it's because there has been expenditures haven't kept pace. But we really believe with the pandemic, with all sorts of ways that you can support families who qualify for childcare. There could be very many more that are qualifying. We ask that you have some kind of mechanism in place to make sure we don't start a wait list. Back in 2008, 2009, during the last recession, we did start a wait list in New Hampshire, and we found that many families had to turn down jobs they were offered or leave a job they were currently in because they just couldn't find a childcare that they afforded without this assistance. So a wait list really hurts those families who are working hard to get ahead. We hope you pay special attention to 536. And the other quick thing that I would mention is that the right below 536 is 564, protecting and preventing preventative childcare. This helps those families that are children who have been victims of abuse or neglect or are at risk to make sure they have stable, reliable childcare. And the department has asked for another $2 million per year there, and we support that as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. And who do we have next?
We have Christina Darling, followed by Amy Brooks. Amy, if you could please raise your hand so I know where to find you. And Ms. Darling, if you could unmute yourself, we appreciate it. Thank you. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Christina Darling, and I live in Nashua, New Hampshire with my two boys, Caden and Brennan, both of whom received the New Hampshire Child Care Scholarship. Allow me to start by saying that when I was a kid, it was never my intention or desire to need to receive state assistance to survive. However, when I found myself suddenly a single mom with no local family support and two small boys who depended on me for absolutely everything, survival was the only thing that mattered. Survival meant paying the bills, which means I needed to work. In order to work, I needed childcare. To get childcare, I needed money. It's a terrifying loop that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Without the New Hampshire Child Care Scholarship, I'd still be stuck in that loop. The scholarship allowed me to find full-time employment and keep my apartment, while also ensuring my children were safe and cared for while I was gone during the day. You see, I have big dreams for my family. Someday I hope to buy a house and take my kids on a vacation to experience a different culture and pay for them to go to college. But even with my full-time job, where I provide essential services and resources to families in affordable housing, in a perfect month where no bills go over and my food cost stays down, I can walk away with $75 a month to put in savings. Believe it or not, that's more than I ever have before. If I didn't have access to the Child Care Scholarship, I'd be back to juggling my bills and trying to explain to my kids why we don't have power when all of our neighbors do. I want to take a moment just to tell you about my sister. She's an essential worker who had to leave her job as a nursing assistant during a time when we need healthcare workers. The cost of childcare compared to the income she made working with our most vulnerable was just too much. And due to issues with the New Hampshire Child Care Scholarship,
1 minute.
It was more cost effective for her to leave her job and apply for other state assistance. That's emergency rental assistance, utility assistance, Medicaid for her and her kids, cash assistance, and food stamps. I've often wondered what costs more, child care scholarship or paying for the family of five's welfare. I pride myself in setting the best possible example I can for my boys. I really show them what a strong, independent woman looks like and what it means to step up and take care of your family. I'm not asking for handouts. I proudly earn everything. I work for everything I earn. I'm speaking out today in opposition of HB1, and I would ask that you put yourselves in the minds and shoes of your essential workers who rely on childcare scholarships so that moms like me and my sister can build a savings, reach our financial goals, and pull our families up and out of poverty permanently. Thank you all for your time and for allowing me to be here and share my testimony with you.
Thank you for your testimony. We're working on all those areas.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Amy Brooks, followed by Jane Marquis.
Very good.
Ms. Brooks,
Only getting on the list.
you can unmute yourself, Ms. Brooks.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Amy Brooks. I was the owner and director of a nationally accredited center in Colebrook, New Hampshire for 20 years. I've experienced the impact of the employment-related childcare scholarship, and in COAS especially, it's not uncommon to consistently have 50% of our children qualifying for childcare scholarship. I remember a time when employment-related childcare scholarship was underfunded, and that had created a waiting list. I recall on many occasions a mom being ready to re-enter the workforce after being home with their young children, only to find that they were waitlisted, and to receive childcare assistance, they had to defer the job and inform their potential employer, who was eager to hire, that they would not be rejoining the workforce after all. Currently in COAS, specifically in Colebrook, we're experiencing an increase in manufacturing and a workforce shortage. It is critical that families continue to be able to access high quality childcare. And without that access, the workforce will continue to be stifled, and this economic growth opportunity will be seriously interrupted. Access to childcare is critical in rebuilding New Hampshire's economy, and up here in COAS, we have opportunities now to rebuild. But these opportunities can only be realized when parents have access to childcare. A fully funded employment-related assistance budget is key to this rebuild. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Jane Marquis. Jane, are you there? Marquis? I don't have any response. We have, can you unmute yourself, Ms. Marquis? I'm not getting response. We have Jim Doremus next. I will promote him to panelist. Jim?
Mr. Speaker, this is Representative Walls again. I just got a text from Representative Amanda Toll saying that she was called to testify, but she couldn't unmute quickly enough, and that she's in the waiting room and asking that you call her again.
What was the name again, Representative Walls?
Representative Amanda Toll.
Okay.
I've not called that name, but we can put her on the list.
I don't know if she was, I don't know if she was on the list. We're going to go through the list before we go to people that are raising their hands newly.
Well, she's suggesting that she says they called on me, but I could not unmute in time.
Oh, they did call on her.
That's what she's just texted me.
We don't have that name. We had an Elizabeth O'Neill and Nancy Kelleher. The only other names that were called.
Well,
she did not respond, but I'll look for her. But she is on this list. She is not, Amanda Toll from Keene is not due to testify for several spots. And we just have a list that we are going by that was generated in order of when folks registered. So if someone needs to be moved up for some reason, the chair needs to decide that, but we are going in order.
I understand that. I just wanted to alert you to this text.
Okay, we have I've been asking the folks when I call their name to raise their hand, but folks are raising their hand for other reasons. So we are just going in order of the list that was generated at this time until the chair directs us otherwise. Mr. Doremus, your name was called and you are available to speak.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Jim Doremus and I'm the CEO of the Concord Family YMCA. I'm here today on behalf of the YMCA Alliance of New Hampshire, which is comprised of the 9 YMCAs in our state. Collectively, the YMCA is the largest provider of childcare and summer camp in the Granite State. We serve more than 15,000 kids in camp, 3,000 kids in before and after school programs, and more than 1,000 young children in our early education programs each year. Approximately 20% of the children we serve participate in the subsidy program. The YMCA Alliance of New Hampshire strongly opposes the cut to the Child Care Scholarship Program. The Child Care Subsidy Scholarship Program is critical support for thousands of New Hampshire children to access safe and quality care. Now more than ever, due to the continued impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, we know families need this program. Please keep enough funding in the employment-related childcare line in the budget so that we don't have to start a wait list for this important service. On behalf of the state's 9 YMCAs, we thank you for the opportunity to be part of this conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Joseph Laskas.
Okay.
Laskas, I have promoted you. There you are. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
There you are. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. My name is Joseph Laskas. I am representing the American Civil Liberties Union of New Hampshire on this, and we are in opposition to HB1 on the original proposal to cut both the Education Department and the Transitional Housing from the Department of Corrections. The fact that I have a criminal background is a known wide fact, but not something I generally like to talk about or enjoy doing. I do, though, voluntarily share this information in hopes that the experiences I've been through would help New Hampshire create a better system for rehabilitating and creating successful opportunities for formerly incarcerated individuals. I paroled from the prison system in 2019, and over the 13 years I was incarcerated, I met and saw many people parole from the prison system. I don't personally know every individual who's paroled from the prison system, but everyone I personally know that has been rehabilitated has participated in the educational opportunities provided at the DOC. The Education Department provides an environment where people learn a rehabilitative mode of thinking, and it's a place where hope is instilled in others to see opportunities available through education. And that is so important because we live in a society where the value of education is underscored by the fact that this information is required on every job application I can think of. So I don't understand how this legislator could consider removing one of the most critical tools used to helping re-entering society members succeed in the New Hampshire community. And this leads to the second component of re-entry, which is transitional housing. Eliminating transitional housing from the budget closes the doors both literally and figuratively on those residents who are in those housing units. The transitional housing system is a system that is built to help people continue their rehabilitative path back into the community as they experience the shock of going from one world to the next, as well as preparing them for the challenges that they're going to go through when they parole. So I respectfully ask that this committee places both the Education Department and the transitional housing back into the budget and approves it here in New Hampshire. Thank you.
I have good news for you. About 11:30, we restored the education for the Corrections Department. However, long-term transitional housing, which we've been asked for in many different, is a long-term effect, and it's very difficult to either build it or locate it, but we'll keep working on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, next up I have Carolyn Virtue, but I do not see her in the queue. Carolyn, if you're there, could you please raise your hand? And after Carolyn is Steve Onen, and I would ask him to do the same. I have Paula Minahan from the Hospital Association, and I believe she may be in for Mr. Anand, so I will promote her. Paula Minahan? Paula, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Thank you. Yes. Good afternoon. And I am filling in for Steve Anand. Unfortunately, he had a death in the family. For the record, Paula Minahan, Senior Vice President, State Government Relations for the New Hampshire Hospital Association. Thank you for this opportunity. New Hampshire hospitals and the healthcare heroes who work in them are driven by the mission to provide high quality healthcare and improve the health and well-being of the communities they serve. New Hampshire hospitals remain committed to caring for their communities and ensuring access to quality, compassionate care. This is true every day, and that resolve has certainly been demonstrated throughout the past year. But hospitals have been challenged over the past year as we have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. When COVID-19 arrived in New Hampshire, hospitals became the front lines of defense against the highly contagious and dangerous disease, from securing scarce personal protective equipment, standing up additional capacity to treat COVID-19 patients, canceling non-urgent elective procedures, standing up testing capacity around the state, and so much more. Hospitals have responded with great compassion and care to ensure that their patients were able to get the care that they needed. The pandemic has challenged us all, and working together, we believe we can emerge from this crisis. But it will take great care to ensure that New Hampshire does so in ensuring that we are able to serve the citizens across the state. We are also very focused on the Medicaid program, and it is absolutely essential that we have a robust and effective Medicaid program that helps to ensure recipients are getting the right care at the right time in the right place. And we are appreciative that the House Bill 1 put forth by Governor Sununu includes the Medicaid enhancement tax and Medicaid disproportionate share program settlement agreement provisions that were negotiated years ago, and we appreciate that. We are also very appreciative of the Medicaid rate increases that were included in the last budget and maintained in the budget before the House. A budget is designed to address key priorities in the state, and there are many that we navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic. However, there is no more urgent and pressing priority than addressing the behavioral health crisis facing New Hampshire. As we have said before, any plan that is focused on solving the totality of the behavioral health crisis must be a clear focus on addressing the challenge of patients waiting in the emergency rooms today, tomorrow, next week, and next year. It needs to be part of a comprehensive solution in addition to increasing inpatient capacity to solve the emergency room boarding crisis, provide increases to community-based services across the continuum of care in outpatient, mobile crisis, crisis stabilization, and many others, so that patients can access care and treatment before the patient becomes.
All right, there's your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Laura Pelletier, followed by Jemima Chapman and Lynn Chalet. And I would ask those individuals to please raise their hands so we can find them, and anyone else to please lower your hand. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Laura Pelletier. I live in Moulton Borough, and I am director at Interlake Daycare Center and Nursery School in Meredith. I am here to talk to you about childcare. Interlake Daycare Center is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. During the last year, we never closed. We stayed open for the families of essential workers so that they could continue working. Historically, around 40% of our children that we care for are from low-income families who qualify for the Child Care Scholarship. Many people wouldn't expect that to be true of a town like Meredith, but that need is absolutely there. In a tourist town, many of the people who live here year-round work in retail and service jobs. We're now getting more and more families calling who are going back to work and who qualify for the Child Care Scholarship. We believe the need for those families to be able to access affordable childcare is going to be it was before, if not a greater need. If there ends up being a wait list for scholarships, these parents can't work. When this happened a few years back, we know that it means that they needed to qualify for higher levels of state assistance. Through the years, I personally have seen the scholarship program help families get ahead. These families are able to afford childcare, to grow in their job, and contribute to the economy. I would like to tell you about one of our former parents. She was a single mom. She had a toddler, and she had told us that she wanted to own her own business someday, that she had known from the time she was a teenager what she wanted to do in life, and that's what she was working toward. She qualified for the scholarship program, and her son attended our program while she worked. We got to see her start her business and then grow it year after year. And she is now a successful businesswoman who not only is incredibly successful in her field, but also now gives back to the community. She has taught classes, and she regularly donates to local charities using her business profits. If she hadn't been able to access this scholarship, I don't think that she would be where she is today. And there are stories like this that childcare providers all across the state could share. In closing, I would ask that you put enough funding in the employment-related childcare line to make sure that every eligible parent who is working or looking for work can use it to get ahead. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for your testimony. It's good to hear that the program is working.
Next up, we have Jemima Chapman, followed by Lynn Chalet. Ms. Chapman, if you're available, please unmute yourself. Go ahead, Ms. Chapman, you're live.
Hi, I'm Jemima Chapman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm an executive director at a nationally accredited childcare center in Kingston, New Hampshire. And I'm here just to ask you to please keep enough funding in the New Hampshire childcare budget for scholarships, because families, this gives them that initial boost to get back to work. And I've seen so many families use this, be able to get back to work, start providing for their family, and then later be able to self-sufficiently pay their childcare. And one of my examples is an employee that is here at the Kingston Children's Center, and she had children using the childcare scholarship. And without her here and without others like her here, we would be short-staffed. And she has been able to go back to school since having her children attending here and using that childcare scholarship. And she now is able to self-sufficiently pay her childcare. But it was just a tremendous boost for her. So I thank you for listening, and please keep that money available for these families that need it.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have, we have Lynn Chalet, followed by Erica Bro. Erica, if you could raise your hand next so we can find you. And Lynn, if you could unmute yourself.
Great, wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for this opportunity. My name is Lynn Chalet, and I'm the Executive Director at the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. I'm here today in support of House Bill 1 and the allocation for domestic violence and sexual assault services. This allocation would ensure that the state budget adequately funds the life-saving services that are provided by our 13 crisis centers to address sexual assault and domestic violence across our state. Over the last 2 years, New Hampshire's crisis centers served nearly 30,000 individual victims, including providing shelter to just over 1,000 adults and children in our 12 emergency domestic violence shelters, for a total of over 86,000 bed nights. Yet at the same time, 1,672 adults and 740 children had to seek shelter elsewhere because we just didn't have the capacity in our programs. As a state, we have worked tirelessly to respond to the opioid crisis, the lack of mental health services, which you've heard about today, to improve child protection, and to address the shortages we are experiencing in adequate housing. However, we must continue to recognize that many individuals are in need of all of these services as a direct result of family violence, domestic abuse, and sexual assault. When we as a state begin to respond earlier and more comprehensively to victimization and trauma, we will reduce the impact and the cost of these crimes in our communities. The essential role that crisis centers play in our communities to respond to trauma has become increasingly apparent over the last year as we have witnessed the devastating impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had in the Granite State. Imagine the terror of being asked to shelter at home with the person who is battering or raping you every single day. Despite the added barriers that made it really challenging for victims to reach out to advocates, crisis centers received nearly 100,000 emergency calls through their crisis hotline in 2020, representing almost a 40% increase in calls from 2019. So what I hope this committee will consider is that when victims don't receive support, especially as children, the long-term effects of trauma manifest in a variety of ways, including chronic physical and mental health issues, depression, suicide, substance abuse disorders, and difficulty maintaining employment. When we as a state work to reduce domestic and sexual violence, we will reduce these negative impacts on New Hampshire's communities, our families, our businesses, our healthcare system, and our economy. Thank you for your consideration of this proposed budget.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Erica Bro, followed by Cheryl Bailey and Aaron Bouvier. And if Ms. Bailey and Ms. Bouvier could raise their hands so we can promote you next. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Bro, you're live.
Hello, my name is Erica. I was raised in Laconia and currently live in Guilford. I'm a site director for a childcare center in Belmont. New Hampshire is a wonderful place to live, work, and raise a family. Yet in life, there are struggles that a lot of people face every day. Now, more than ever, I believe it is important to receive a hand up, not a handout, which is what childcare assistance does for families. I'm a single mom of 2 boys. I've worked for Lakes Region Childcare from 2006 to 2019, when we merged with the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Hampshire. I have been the site director for Belmont Early Learning Center since 2010. I'm here today to share my experiences of how state assistance has impacted my life as a single mom and also as a child care administrator. I have experienced the impact and have seen how families are impacted by this on a daily basis. My employment over the years has provided me with a stable income, health insurance. It gave my children the opportunity for early learning and a connection with a deep and wide support system who many never even thought existed. Still, the only way I was able to afford and keep my employment was to continue receiving childcare assistance. Having the ability to access assistance over the years helped me to be able to not only keep my job, but move up in my career. It played a huge part in where I am today. As a parent, I value the experiences the early education field has offered my children. I enjoy the daily responsibilities that come with my profession. And most importantly, I take pride in contributing to be a contributing member of our society. As a child care administrator, I know the impact having child care assistance has on our families and accessing high quality programs. As an organization, we have over 100 members that are currently receiving assistance. Pre-COVID, it was 175 members. It is the assistance for families that makes it so they can continue employment and send their children to a high quality program. We all know that in a stable, nurturing environment, surrounded by attentive caregivers, children are better able to acquire the social, cognitive, language, and life skills that are so vital for future success. Such children are far more likely to grow into healthy, happy, and responsible adults. They're more likely to succeed in school and on the job and raise healthy families of their own. In other words, if we want to be surrounded by great neighbors in a great community 20 years from now, we need to lay the foundation for them today, which requires providing families the supports they need to continue being employed and having a safe place for their children to go.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chair, we had called the names of Cheryl Bailey and Aaron Bouvier, but I do not see their hands raised. So the next person on the list is Elizabeth Margolin, followed by Representative Timothy Horrigan, and I would ask Mr. Horrigan to raise his hand so we can find him. And Ms. Margolin, you are panelist.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Alyssa Margolin. I serve as Director of Housing Action New Hampshire. We're a statewide coalition of 80 organizations united around affordable housing policy and ending homelessness in New Hampshire. As you know, New Hampshire is experiencing a true shortage in housing. We have a supply side problem in our state, particularly in the rental market. This is causing financial hardship among many New Hampshire families who are paying more than 50% of their monthly income towards their rent. In fact, over half of our renter population, which makes up about a third of all residents of New Hampshire, are paying too much. When you pay too much for your rent, it means you don't have money to put in the rest of your local economy. In an otherwise strong economy before the pandemic, housing was a weak spot for our state.
2 minutes.
And it continues to challenge us. I'd like to bring to the attention of this committee 3 aspects in the budget to consider as you consider HB1 and HB2, and when the budget comes back to you from the Senate and you have a chance to consider appropriations in the Committee of Conference. First, I ask that you look at the Affordable Housing Fund. This is New Hampshire's State Housing Trust Fund, where public dollars leverage private capital to build more affordable housing. Second, ask you to consider funding for homeless shelter operations. It costs about $47 per person per night to shelter someone in New Hampshire. The state currently reimburses that service at $8.80. So increased money for homeless shelter operations can provide at least some sustainability and help those shelters address the increase in homelessness and the rise in encampments in our state. And finally, I would just ask that you consider to keep the funding for the Housing Appeals Board that the governor has included in his budget. And with that, I'll conclude my testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Representative Timothy Horrigan, followed by William Maddox and Elliot Berry. If you could please raise your hands. Thank you. Representative Horrigan, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, I've got the buttons pressed. I'm unmuted. You can even see me. Not that you would have been missing much if you couldn't. So I'm Resident Timothy Horrigan. I represent Stratford County District 6, the towns of Durham and Madbury. And of course, the Durham is Durham is significant because that's the home of UNH. And first, I'm going to say I'm not sure if I'm going to be for or against the version of HB 1 and 2, which will come to the floor of the House on April 7th. I'm sure it's going to be different than what the governor introduced. So that's what I'm working off of. I'm certainly opposed to that. And also, of course, he introduced it a few days late on March 2nd. I'm not sure what the significance that is, but we are behind schedule. So the U.S. first thing about where Durham comes in, USNH CCNH merger. I know there's lots of advantages that supposedly it'll lead to, but those good things are already being done even without the merger. And I think the experience, the past shows that the merger is pointless and unnecessary. Also, probably more importantly, there's a small business development center. The governor proposed slashing its budget. That's probably the most productive money we spent. The tax cut rate's pointless. You're going to have no stimulus effect. That's a fantasy that there's going to be incredible economic growth in the tax cut. It's going to make no difference to anybody's spending or investment decisions, none, because they're just small tax cuts. And reducing revenues is not necessarily a good thing. If it does reduce spending, it's actually not bad for the economy. And actually, especially not when we do the things where we're making tough choices, like you hear a lot about helping the vulnerable. That's actually good for the economy, helping the vulnerable. So finally, on a happier note, the governor proposed significantly enhancing the legislative branch's budget. I think that's long overdue. We need a lot more resources to do our job, more staff, more infrastructure, more everything. I know that's not fashionable, but we need to spend more than we've been spending. And running the legislative branch on the cheap, minimally staffed, using outmoded processing technology. It didn't work pre-pandemic. I thought we were pretty outmoded even when I got here, and that was 12 years ago. We made no changes. 1 minute? Okay, I thought I had 0 minutes. Okay, so running the legislative branch minimally staffed using outmoded processing technology. It didn't work pre the pandemic. It's not working during the pandemic, although we've made some good changes, and we're still here, we're still running, and it won't work post-pandemic. So that's basically why. Basically, I'm planning to vote against the budget. I do recognize it's going to go to the Senate. There's also, of course, we may have to hold it over the summer, and so. But right now, HB1, HB2, as I understand it, I'm voting against it. So that's basically what I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony, Representative Horrigan.
Good. I'm going to email you some written testimony in a minute too. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Chair, next we have Bill Maddox, followed by Elliot Berry and Christine Stoddard. If you could both raise your hand, and if you are on a phone call, please hit *9 to do so. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Bill Maddox. I'm a small business owner from Amherst, and I'm testifying today against HB1 and HB2. The committee is well aware of the massive toll the shutdown required to protect lives has taken on families in the Granite State. Even before the pandemic, 33% of people in New Hampshire were poor or low income, total of 439,000 residents. Greater than 47% of New Hampshire renters are paying more than 30% of their income for housing. Nearly half of New Hampshire adults reported a loss of household employment between March and July of last year, and significant portions of households expected future employment income losses or reported difficulty paying for usual expenses. Consistently since April 2020, about 1 in every 20 households in New Hampshire indicated there was either sometimes or not enough, or often not enough food to eat in the last 7 days. New Hampshire has the 7th highest per capita number of millionaires in the country. And according to Forbes magazine, people in the highest income levels have seen their wealth increase by 1.3 trillion since March 2020, an increase of 44%. The governor's budget proposes those least impacted by the pandemic of getting a tax break. These are the 2.4% of New Hampshire taxpayers who report at least $200,000 in taxable interest, dividend, and distribution income. I can assure you I am not one of them. The budget proposes reducing the rate of and eventually eliminating the interest and dividends tax over 5 years, and again giving a handout to the state's wealthiest households. This tax revenue source generated $125.7 million for the general fund in state fiscal year 2020, or 8.2% of all general fund revenue collected that year. A repeal of the tax would lead to significant revenue losses relative to current policy. Our economy is in recovery from the pandemic, and budget reductions have been proposed to the Department of Safety, Department of Transportation, Department of Education, underfunding of child care services, as you heard from other speakers, by millions, which could dramatically increase the wait list, and discontinuation of over $40 million in municipal aid funding in the 2020 budget, which could lead to substantial property tax increases. The priorities of this budget are misguided and should be amended by the legislature. At a time when our nation and our state are moving towards recovery from the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression, when thousands of our neighbors are in the midst of economic peril, giving the wealthiest among us a tax break does not pass the moral test these times require. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Christine Stoddard, because I do not see Mr. Barry's hand. We've skipped him, followed by Laura Gifford and Doug Mcnutt. And if those two individuals could raise their hand so we can find them. Thank you. Gifford.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Stoddard, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at Bi-State Primary Care Association. Thank you for allowing us to speak to the state budget. We did sign in as neutral, and I will submit written testimony, but I wanted to draw your attention to 2 issues that were raised last week in Division 3. One of them was the state loan repayment program, and the second issue that I wanted to discuss with you today is the family planning program. Bi-State is a nonprofit organization that's located in Bow, and we advocate for access to primary and preventive care for all New Hampshire residents with a special emphasis on the medically underserved. We also represent New Hampshire's 14 community health centers, which are located in medically underserved areas. And those health centers provide integrated substance use disorder treatment, behavioral health, primary care, and oral health services to 120,000 patients, one of 5 who are enrolled in the Medicaid program. Last week in Division 3, DHHS testified that there is a program within House Bill 2 that is intended to replace the state loan repayment program. And we would ask that instead of replacing SLRP, as it's affectionately known, that these programs operate simultaneously. They are designed to meet very different needs and serve very different purposes. And it's my understanding that they were speaking to the Workforce Development Debt Relief Program that begins on page 70. We would ask that the state loan repayment program continue as it is and as it was funded in the 2019 budget, which was at $6.5 million. As you know, this program provides partial payment towards educational loans of qualified healthcare professionals in exchange for working in medically underserved areas. So we would ask that that program continue. We also respectfully request that an additional $1.2 million be added to the family planning program because, as many of you know, there is a change at the federal level that affects who can participate in this program and participate in the federal funding for that program. And we would like that the general funds be added so that there are no gaps in services in the family planning program. Thank you for your time, and I am happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you for your testimony. We're not equipped to get into a debate and answer questions, but we appreciate your offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Next up, we have Laura Gifford, followed by Doug Mcnutt and New Futures. If New Futures could raise their hand, please. Thank you. Laura Gifford, please unmute yourself. Ms. Gifford?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Laura Gifford, and I am a school nurse. I am a resident of Jaffrey, New Hampshire, and I'm writing to urge you to support the Children's Behavioral Health Services. I'm a registered nurse for 30 years and currently work as a practicing school nurse during my 11 years at Wilton Limeboro Cooperative School District. I've observed an increase in the children's mental health problems since the beginning of COVID. Continuous exposure to toxic stress can be detrimental to a child's overall well-being. Untreated mental health illnesses in early childhood can lead to negative emotional, mental, and chronic health diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, depression, and anxiety. Beyond a child's physical and mental health, a lack of children's behavioral health services can lead to delinquency, high-risk behavior, and even a child's likelihood of an educational attainment. The CDC has produced a short video clip that explains why we should be champions of children and their support groups. And I've listed it on my letter that I sent in. I feel like supporting the efforts to help children in the state of New Hampshire will benefit all of the citizens to becoming all that they can be. Investing in our children's behavior and mental well-being today is an investment for our future. Thank you. And I do appreciate your time to listen to my testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for coming.
Next up, we have Doug Mcnutt. Mcnutt, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Hi, members of the committee. My name is Doug Mcnutt. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am the Associate State Director for Advocacy for Aarp, New Hampshire, and we represent over 215,000 members statewide. And one of the things that is always clear about our members, although they don't agree on everything, over 90% of them believe that they want to stay at home as long as they can in their communities as they age. And my focus today is really going to be on one issue, and that is the Choices for Independence waiver, which is the program that is designed for those who are eligible to be in a nursing home, but can be taken care of at home. And the reason it's important is it allows people to stay at home. It is less expensive. And then, as we've seen in this pandemic, it is safer for people to stay at home. One of the things that I would point out is there's a report that just has been released by the Department of Health and Human Services, which shows that because of underpayments, a lot of services that have been authorized for people to be taken care of at home can't be filled. And that's part of the workforce crisis that has caused the difficulties that we have. So I have submitted written testimony, and I just would speak to you today and urge you to fully support increases in the Choices for Independence program so that we can do a better job of taking care of our aging and adults with disabilities at home. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next up, we have Michelle Merritt with New Futures, followed by Emily Johnson and Scott Marion. If you could both raise your hands, please.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me and maybe see me as well.
You're fine.
Thank you, Chairman Weiler and honorable members of the committee. Again, my name is Michelle Merritt. I'm the president and CEO of New Futures. We appreciate the opportunity to weigh in this afternoon. For those who aren't familiar with New Futures, we're a nonpartisan, nonprofit health policy and advocacy organization doing work statewide to improve the health and wellness of all Granite Staters. In our role, we believe it's our responsibility to educate, raise awareness, and lead policy change related to health and well-being. And in that vein, this past summer, New Futures surveyed hundreds of New Hampshire residents across the state to try to gain a better understanding of community needs during this unprecedented time. And from this feedback, we formed New Futures' 5-point plan for a healthy budget, which we have provided copies of with more detail to the committee. We believe that the 5 areas I'm just going to quickly run through, if fully funded in the New Hampshire state budget, would go far to address issues resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as overcoming health disparities for historically marginalized groups and New Hampshire's children and families. So quickly, those 5 points are supporting local and public health programs and services, ensuring access to healthcare by supporting a strong healthcare workforce, supporting efforts to sustain and grow behavioral health services in our communities, sustaining investments that help mitigate and prevent childhood trauma to help Granite State children and families, and protecting children's behavioral health programs to ensure coordinated and timely care for New Hampshire's youth. The governor's proposed budget did cover numerous provisions in our 5-point plan, but there are a few areas we want to specifically call out for attention by the committee. So the first is something that Christine Stoddard just mentioned from Bi-State Primary Care on the New Hampshire State Loan Repayment Program. Horrible acronym, SLRP, but these funds do represent a critical investment to helping recruit and retain workers in New Hampshire, and we would encourage the committee to preserve those funds. I also want to call out adolescent tobacco and SUD prevention. The DHHS Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Unit did request an additional $220,000 in a prioritized need. We would encourage the committee to consider funding that request. Early childhood, this is something that many people before us have also spoke about. Unfortunately, $1.3 million per year from the Department of Health and Human Service budget for primary prevention programming was cut. We would like to see that restored. It's something the governor also encouraged the committee to do in his March 4th letter. And then finally, New Futures would really be remiss if we did not clearly and unequivocally state our support for the governor's appropriations for children's behavioral health. On March 14th, New Hampshire set a really unfortunate record. We had 51 kids boarding in hospital emergency rooms across the state. And I should mention that the children and families that are there, sorry, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Emily Johnson, followed by Scott Marion and Roger DeRochers.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Emily Johnson. I am the state manager for Save the Children Action Network in New Hampshire. At Save the Children Action Network, we believe all children deserve access to high quality early childhood education. Since 2014, we have worked in partnership with community volunteers, policy advocates, and state legislators to improve accessibility and quality of New Hampshire's childcare and early learning programs. I'm here today to oppose cuts to employment-related childcare funding in House Bill 1, which can be found on page 950 of your budget book. Employment-related childcare funds grant assistance to hardworking families with young children. Parents who are income eligible for this assistance benefit by having the ability to continue to work and earn a living while their children receive high-quality care and education. Without this assistance, New Hampshire children will miss out on high-quality foundational education, and their parents are likely to miss out on earnings and/or career advancement while staying home with kids. Employment-related child care assistance is essential not only for child well-being, but for working parents and their ability to earn money for basic costs of survival.
2 minutes.
It is not unlikely for an income-eligible family to wind up qualifying for increased state assistance when denied child care scholarship due to insufficient funds. When considering the essential nature of these funds, coupled with the impact COVID-19 has had on working families, I cannot think of a worse time to make the proposed cuts to this funding. While we cannot predict how many working parents will be income eligible for these scholarships in the coming fiscal year, trends of pandemic-related job loss and unemployment suggest that more families will require child care assistance in coming years. I urge you to prioritize these families and the efficiency of state dollars by providing at least level funding for employment-related childcare for fiscal year 2022-2023. In conclusion, I urge members of this committee to amend House Bill 1 to include sufficient funding of employment-related childcare. It's a smart investment for the future of our state while we focus on COVID-19 recovery and beyond. Thanks for your time today and for letting me testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We're not set up to do any questions.
Oh, well, thank you then.
Next up, we have Scott Marion, followed by Roger DeRochers, Susan Stearns, and Bonnie Dunham.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Marion. I live in Rye, New Hampshire. I'm on the school board. I've been on the school board for 8 years. And I'll be short. It's nice to see Representative Heath and Representative Norton. I just want to emphasize, and I know that you guys are between the rock and the hard place, but I just want to emphasize the downshifting that's in the governor's budget and that will likely have to carry through to this bill unless you protect it. But just a very simple case in our little school budget, relatively little compared to other places in the state, but not so little to us. There was a significant increase last year in our share of retirement costs. Why? It's not that retirement went up, it's because the state downshifted those costs to the locals. And so
2 minutes.
When you're trying to need to balance these budgets, and I know you're driven by revenue and negotiations with the governor, but you have to recognize that the same people are paying, whether you downshift it to the towns, and oftentimes it makes it worse when you downshift it to the towns than when the state takes responsibility. So education funding is a mess in the state in general, and so I urge you to consider the total cost to taxpayers, not just the state tab, but also what folks are paying locally. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Roger DeRochers, followed by Susan Stearns, Bonnie Dunham, and Maureen Tracy. If you could all raise your hands. Thank you. Mr. DeRochers, could you unmute yourself, please? You are unmuted, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weiler and members of the House Finance Committee. My name is Roger DeRozier. I'm the chair of the Capital City Task Force for AARP, and I'm from Concord. I'm a baby boomer in my 70s who is looking down the road at my possible future need for in-home services. All of my friends and fellow AARP members share the same desire to remain in their home when possible. It concerns me that the budget does not include a raise for all services in the state's Choices for Independence program, CFI. The services in this program, as I understand them, allows individuals to remain in their own home versus a nursing home. Certainly, I would prefer to stay in my own home that I have known for years and maintain my independence as long as possible. This can happen only if a comprehensive array of in-home services are available to residents in need.
2 minutes.
The governor's proposed budget does provide some increases for some services to keep people at home, but it doesn't go far enough. The rate increases for some CFI services are not adequate to attract and expand the needed number of providers of these services. Other services, such as adult medical daycare, have not received an increase even when this service is currently reimbursed via Medicaid at about half of the actual cost of $112 per day. As a result, many adult daycare agencies have closed in the last 5 to 10 years, cutting off services to Medicaid and private pay individuals alike. This is bad news for New Hampshire's 177,000 unpaid family caregivers, many of whom could, would, and did use this service for needed respite without burgeoning the state budgets. Now is the time to make budget increases for an array of adult in-home services as an alternative to much more expensive nursing home care. As my generation ages, the need for in-home services will increase geometrically. By 2030, all baby boomers will be 65 or older, according to the US Census. Baby boomers in New Hampshire will make up about 1/4 of its population. So it's imperative to make in-home services available now and prepare for the future growth. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Susan Stearns, followed by Bonnie Dunham and Maureen Tracy, if she is available.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weiler and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Susan Stearns, and I'm a resident of Samberton. In the interest of full disclosure, I am employed as the Deputy Director of NAMI New Hampshire, and I volunteer as a board member at the Lakes Region Mental Health Center in Laconia. However, today I come before you in neither of those roles. Instead, I am here in my most important role as a mother. I ask that you ensure that the budget you pass fully funds critically needed mental health services, services that are accessible to all Granite Staters. Yesterday, there were 55 adults and 22 children experiencing a mental health crisis, waiting in emergency departments across our state for an inpatient bed. We all know that this crisis has been going on for over 8 years. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of Granite Staters of all ages have faced this unacceptable delay in accessing essential mental health care.
2 minutes.
The story I have to share with you is one that is too common, I fear. It is the story of my adult child who lives with a serious mental illness. While traveling pre-COVID days, my child phoned me. He was going through a recent medication change and was in crisis, fearing he would hurt himself. He felt he might be suicidal. He asked if he should go to the local emergency room. I did not know what to say. I have been his advocate since he was first diagnosed with an emotional disorder at the age of 5, a serious one at age 8, and a serious mental illness at age 14. I have done this work as a mental health advocate for over 20 years. This is what I do. I advocate for people with mental illness and their families every day. I get calls from people who know me and ask me for advice on how to direct them for help for a loved one. Faced with my son in crisis over 500 miles away, I was terrified.
1 minute.
I have already sat at the bedside of a child after a suicide attempt. In that moment, when my second child was on the phone, I was afraid for his safety with him alone in the house, but I was also afraid for his safety should he wind up boarding an emergency department without an advocate at hand. He's 6'6", not violent, but highly sensitive and emotional. He'd never had an inpatient psychiatric admission. I feared that if he was stuck in an emergency department for days, would he become upset? Would someone find him threatening because of his size? In the hardest decision of my life, I told him no, do not go to the emergency department. I was able to access family support for him and returned home the next day. We successfully managed his crisis with his doctor. This is a story I rarely share. Sadly, though, I have heard it frequently from other families, other parents, those who know what it means for someone experiencing a psychiatric crisis to board for days or weeks in an emergency department. Thank you for taking the time to hear me today. I urge you to fully fund mental health services.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Bonnie Dunham, followed by Maureen Tracy and Stephen Gadu. If you could raise your hands. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. My name is Bonnie Dunham, and I'm asking you, when you pass the budget, to please ensure that it meets the needs of individuals with developmental disabilities and their families by fully funding the developmental services budget. I'm the mom of a wonderful, socially responsible 40-year-old son who experiences complex developmental disabilities. Sean is fun, he's determined, he's charming, and he's a hard worker. He just celebrated his 20th anniversary working at Wendy's. Sean is the only person I know who is really happy to pay taxes because he said that's part of being a good citizen. He's also an excellent civically minded individual in the fact that he volunteers, he recycles, he votes, he picks up litter. Our town is better because Sean lives here. Sean is also an enthusiastic consumer. He makes sure that he spends some of his paycheck every week and supporting our local schools and stores and restaurants. So good that way too. Well, Sean is a happy, fully participating member of our community. Without the services he receives from Gateways Community Services, which is our local area agency, his quality of life would be in jeopardy. Sean needs full-time one-on-one support and supervision. My husband and I provide that every morning, evening, overnight, and on the weekends. Gateways provide Sean with direct support some weekday hours and provide some respite so that my husband and I can sleep through the night every now and then and get an occasional break. We adore our son. He makes our life joyful and it's never dull in our house. But without the services we through Gateways, we could not continue to support Sean in our home and in his community activities, which is a tremendous cost savings to the state. So as you consider the budget, please include full funding for the developmental services budget. My son, my family, and many others like us will thank you for it. And if I could add one more thing, I had two more things. One was the Department of Corrections educational programming, so thank you for that. But the other one is that I hope you prioritize funding for public education, including special education. Those additional funds will help towns and school districts greatly. Thank you very much. Thank you in advance. I know you'll do the right thing, and I thank you for all you've done so far.
Thank you, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Stephen Gadu, followed by Jeff Dickinson and Deborah Nelson. If you could raise your hands, please. Thank you. Mr. Gadu, you need to unmute yourself.
My name is Stephen Gadu. I'm a member of the Budget Committee here in Salem, New Hampshire, and also a business owner here in Salem. I'm in support of HB1. I believe the governor has proposed a very responsible budget, which will keep the New Hampshire advantage very strong. A good budget is about the economy, and Salem being a border town, our economy is dependent on the a strong economy with no new taxes and specifically no sales tax. We have business tax cuts, we have room and meals tax cuts, interest and dividend tax cuts. All of these things contribute to a strong economy that we need in New Hampshire. We have, it's proposed a paid employment leave without imposing a tax on participating employees' income. That's also known as an income tax that we're not going to have in this budget. We have $30 million going to public school infrastructure fund, which downshifts cash to municipalities instead of downshifting costs to the municipalities. I strongly support this budget. I've been listening to all this testimony, and I can understand that there's an unlimited amount of money that we could be possibly spending on charitable programs, but that's not the charge of the state. The state's responsibility is to facilitate a strong economy, not a welfare state. Those who would prefer to live in a welfare state don't need to go very far. Massachusetts will welcome you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Jeffrey Dickinson, followed by Deborah Nelson and Amanda Toll.
Hi there, it's Jeffrey Dickinson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Chairman Weiler and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Jeff Dickinson, and I live in Franklin, and I'm here on behalf of myself, but also Granite State Independent Living, which I serve as Advocacy Director for. And specifically, I wanted to talk about personal care services. I would echo what the folks from AARP have already said regarding fully funding and, if possible, increasing funding for the Choices for Independence program. Not only does it serve those who are aging, but it also serves many of us in the state with significant disabilities, like myself, to get assistance with activities of daily living and things that we're not physically able to do ourselves, but that are required for us to live our lives like everybody else would. I would also ask to fully fund and increase funding, if you can, for what's known as personal care attendant services. Those are not under the CFI waiver. Those are actually under the Medicaid state plan services, and those are specifically for folks with significant disabilities who would otherwise need to be in a nursing home. And it basically provides services that they may get at a nursing home in their own homes, where generally a lot of us would prefer to be. So that's really all I wanted to ask. And I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Deborah Nelson, followed by Amanda Toll and Karen Blake.
This is Deborah Nelson. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I am a private citizen. I'm not speaking on behalf of any particular organization. I am now retired. But I have always had paid sick leave in my jobs because I was a retired, I'm now a retired teacher, and I was fortunate in that respect. But I would like to speak about the governor's paid family leave line item in the budget, which I think simply maintains the status quo. It upholds a system where businesses who choose to provide leave time, sick care will do so, and those who choose not to won't. And I think this will cause small businesses to struggle against larger employers. And I've been listening for the last almost hour and 40 minutes to many people speaking on a whole host of issues about the importance of whether it's AARP about providing the opportunity for people to stay at home, or workers that provide services for people with mental illness, with developmental issues. Those workers, those are the people who need this family leave plan, who need the supports that we can give them in the budget. I feel strongly enough about this issue, despite my privilege and because of my privilege to have had that benefit, that I have attended hearings in both the House and the Senate about the family leave bill. And so I urge you to consider this, to think about making New Hampshire a good place for workers. As the previous speaker spoke to the importance of our economic strength, we are only as strong as our workers, and our workers are only able to do their job if we treat them as human beings. So I thank you for this opportunity to speak. I hope you will address that line item in the budget. I hope you will put money into places that enable us to be a strong and welcoming economy and state. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Representative Amanda Toll, followed by Karen Blake and Forrest Bowden Freed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Prior to beginning my testimony, I just want to note when I originally signed in to testify, I registered my support thinking that we were just addressing the one section of the bill relating to crisis centers. Please change my registered support to neutral, as I support some sections of the budget, but strongly oppose others and want a people's budget that is gracious towards funding social services. I'm ready to begin my testimony. My name is Amanda Elizabeth Toll. I'm here to bring to the committee's attention the budget provision that supports New Hampshire crisis centers. I am a representative serving Cheshire District 16. I'm also a survivor of domestic and sexual violence with firsthand knowledge of the life-saving services provided by crisis centers here in New Hampshire. By the summer of 2017, I had experienced 2 incidences of extreme violence in my marriage. These experiences culminated in a horrifying night where my husband jumped on me and strangled me. After the strangulation, I stopped wanting to be intimate with my son's father. Instead of respecting my boundaries, he repeatedly sexually assaulted and humiliated me for months. That summer, I visited the Mcnutt Violence Prevention Center to get help and advice. They listened with empathy and talked to me about the ways I could get out of the relationship safely, including filing a domestic violence restraining order. Acting on this advice, I was able to safely negotiate a divorce. The sexual violence I had been experiencing for months post-strangulation stopped, and I became the primary parent of my son. Today, I own a small business, teach yoga, and am living a life free of violence with my little boy. Additionally, I am a state representative fighting for those who are still suffering. None of this would have happened if I had not been able to leave the abusive relationship. I am so grateful to MCVP for their help. They are helping others to leave abusive and violent situations, protect themselves and their families, and find freedom and empowerment, all while educating the public and advocating for a future without violence. I am just one of thousands across the state who has benefited from the support of advocates and crisis centers. I was lucky to have the financial support of my family. Many other victims become trapped in abusive relationships because of their lack of financial means or suffering economic abuse. Crisis centers are vital lifelines that link survivors to resources. It is in the best interest of the state to ensure that funding for these valuable services is maintained so that crisis centers are able to respond to the needs of their communities. Let's support this crucial community resource and ensure that other individuals like me are able to safely leave
Thank you, Representative.
abusive and dangerous situations. I
You're free to
respectfully urge
interrupt.
the committee to adopt the proposed budget for our state's domestic violence prevention program and ensure the crisis centers are at a minimum level funded.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Karen Blake, followed by Forrest Bowden Freed, and Catherine Gruette.
Hello, good afternoon, and I'd like to thank the Chairman and members of the Finance Committee for allowing me to testify today. My name is Karen Blake, and I live in North Woodstock, New Hampshire. I am asking for you to support the developmental services budget in HB1 and the people who carry out the work. For full disclosure, I work for Northern Human Services as the coordinator of public policy and marketing. I apologize for the bing bong in the back. That's my husband's business. I also am a member of the Northern Human Services Family Support Advisory Council, and I am on the board of New Hampshire for Autism. My husband and I are also small business owners in the White Mountains. I am testifying today only on my own behalf. My son is supported by Northern Human Services through the in-home support waiver, but we've also had family-centered early supports and services, and we also had family support. Today is my birthday, and it's a big one. It's the kind of birthday that makes you think about the future. But the birthday that I want to talk about is my son's. This past Saturday, my son turned 14 years old, and in the developmental disability community, that's a big one too. This is the age that under his individual education plan, we start to seriously start planning for his future. My son has big plans. He aspires to be the next Steven Spielberg, and he is going to need the support to make his dreams a reality. As I previously stated, he receives in-home supports, and we finally found him a great match for his in-home support provider. These services are helping him work on key items like social interaction, helping him to use money, and he's beginning to cook using a microwave. But we're looking beyond today, and someday he is likely going to need support to be a successful adult. So I'm asking you to fully fund developmental disabilities, not just for my son, but for everyone who needs these services and supports to be successful. Thank you again for holding this public hearing virtually, which is allowing so many people to participate from all over New Hampshire safely today. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Forrest Bowden Freed, followed by Catherine Gruette and Asma Elhouni. Mr. Freed, please unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Forrest Budwin Friday. Yeah, dear Chairman Edwards and members of the Finance Committee, good afternoon. My name is Forrest Budwin Friday, and I live in Peterborough, New Hampshire. I am asking you today to fully fund the developmental services budget and to fund the Medicaid adult dental benefit. I receive supports and services through the DD waiver and am also a New Hampshire Medicaid recipient. It is extremely important for granted staters with disabilities that these priorities are funded. The supports I receive through the DD waiver help me to live independently in my own apartment, work part-time, volunteer in my community, and stay involved in activism. For these reasons, fully funding for developmental services is essential for maintaining my community-based life. As Medicaid recipient, funding for an adult dental benefit is important because I care about living a healthy lifestyle, and oral health is an important part of overall health. Getting an annual dental cleaning is much less expensive than fixing cavities or treating chronic conditions caused by poor health. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Catherine Gruette, followed by Asma Elhouni and Rebecca Sky, our last three registered speakers.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. First, I wanted to thank Joseph Lacasse for his testimony, and I'm also discussing the New Hampshire Department of Corrections education facility and the housing units, the transitional housing. My name's Catherine Gruette. I'm a resident of Center Barnstead, New Hampshire. I am writing to you to consider fully funding all the educational programs at the Department of Corrections. The inmates choose to help themselves in their recovery from the trauma and shame they feel from the physical disease of addiction. The education classes help their mental health, as well as teaching them a skill that they can use when they reintegrate into society. The classes give them a goal and help them to make a plan to make their recovery successful. They get away from the trauma of being in the general population where there is noise and anxiety surrounding you constantly to a quiet, disciplined classroom with dedicated teachers. The teachers not only teach them classes and skills, but teach them how to build up their self-esteem and how to fit into society in the future. They learn the skills to be employed, which leads to paying taxes, child support, and paying off their debts. It is a win for the teachers who are devoted to making life better for the inmates and the community they will move into. It is a win for the inmate who will be contributing to society and the family, and it is a win for the community that surrounds them. It costs money to fully fund this, but it takes money, education, and treatment to cure this epidemic of addiction that is filling our prisons. Please support our state by financing this Department of Correction education fully. Partial support is a failure. And I hope that you'll support all the teachers and keep the entire staff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, and we have good news on that education and corrections.
Next, we have Asma Elhouni. I hope he's there. I've not seen a hand, but I'm promoting her. Could you please unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Asma Elhouni, and I am the Movement Politics Director for Rights and Democracy New Hampshire. And as a Renews Coalition member, we promote the following as a human rights budget. This is something many organizations have come together to share as a people's budget. Some of the coalition members are Poor People's Campaign, Granite State Progress, Rights and Democracy, American Friends Service Committee, and many other orgs. Here goes. New Hampshire's people deserve a state budget that invests in our communities, health, education, recovery, opportunity, and vitality. In order to achieve this, we also need fair and adequate taxation that invites all of us to contribute to the common good in according with our ability to pay. With this in mind, we call for the following as elements of a people's budget of New Hampshire. 1, invest in our recovery from COVID-19 with full funding for public health, economic stability for renters, homeowners, and small businesses, increase access to broadband internet, equipment for remote learning, and remote access to public meetings. 2, invest in real economic security by addressing the needs of low-income families for financial assistance for food, heat, rent, and transportation, including undocumented and mixed status families as eligible for these investments. 3, invest in our state workers with a livable wage, good benefits, and fulfillment of our obligations for their dignified retirement. 4, invest adequately in public health, public schools, and quality public education so that all New Hampshire children have an opportunity to learn and to achieve their full potential. 5, invest in our young adults who deserve affordable higher education, student loan debt relief, and access to affordable rental housing. 6, invest in people with disabilities and their families by fully funding all disability services and supports. 7, invest in our children and their parents with affordable, high-quality childcare. 8, invest in our elders with supports for aging in place and relief from burdensome property taxes. 9, invest in health so that all New Hampshire people have access to high quality, affordable healthcare, including affordable medications, as well as paid family medical leave and paid sick leave. Invest in harm reduction and overdose prevention that moves us away from punitive measures to community solutions that center people's health and well-being. This means addressing substance use disorder as a health condition, not a crime. Using evidence-based public health strategies, we cannot effectively deal with SUD without addressing the underlying issues in our communities that make it difficult for people to cope with life's overwhelming struggles. And also invest in BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, recognizing that they are the most impacted by injustice, and that as a state, we must right our wrongs and discontinue practices that disadvantage BIPOC. Truth and reconciliation for Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities is a necessary first step. The next thing is invest in survivors by supporting social services that support crisis centers for survivors. And last thing I'll say is I personally don't support any increase in the criminal justice.
And your 3 minutes are up.
But I just want to say I do find it interesting that there are cuts that are being made in the criminal justice system in the areas of housing units where that actually benefits people who are incarcerated.
Yes. Thank you for your testimony.
And last we have on the list, Rebecca Skye, and she's being promoted. And Mr. Chair, I'm going to turn the over to Mr. Hoffman after this testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weiler and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing my testimony. My name is Rebecca Skye, and I serve as the Executive Director for the New Hampshire Commission on Aging. The commission was established during the 2019 legislative session to advise the governor and the general court on policy and planning related to aging. Forward-thinking public policy will ensure that all of us have the opportunity to thrive, contribute, and be valued in New Hampshire as we age. First, I want to voice my support for Doug Mcnutt and Jeffrey Dickinson's comments in relation to the Choices for Independence waiver. We need to encourage provision of services at home and in community rather than in long-term care facilities. There are many good considerations in the budget proposed by the governor. I will take the moment to highlight just one missed opportunity that is critically important: the Bureau of Elderly Adult Services Option System Modernization. The current BAS option system was developed in 1998 and initially installed in 1999, which makes it a 23-year-old system. It is truly anachronistic and not suited to achieve the efficiency we need to realize in state government. It is used to manage BAS social work caseloads, the Adult Protection Program, and service authorization and provider payments related to the Social Services Block Grant and the Older Americans Act services. The current system is not web-based and does not allow for remote access, offline access, or any of the needed enhanced system functionality required for the variety of locations and user types that the BEAS business model currently utilizes. BEAS social workers, service link personnel, and contract agencies now do significant field work, realizing efficiencies that benefit both the residents of our state and the state budget bottom line. COVID has only highlighted the increased value of staff nimbleness to conduct remote meetings and to enter and access data remotely. If this modernization project, which was submitted as part of the capital request, is not funded, then the department will need to hire an additional 4.5 full-time employees to maintain current work capacity. In summary, the option system is a 23-year-old system that needs to be updated to help BAS better manage BAS social worker caseload. Without the upgrade, improved business processes are not supported. Customer services could decline and additional personnel will be needed for data entry and manipulation. If funded, New Hampshire will not have to bear the price tag of the modernization project alone. The federal financial participation is anticipated at 40% of the total cost. So thank you for your consideration on that. And with my remaining time, I just want to respond to two elements of HB2. Thank you for recognizing the extremely negative impact of isolation on older adults with the appropriation of the $1.5 million for senior centers and other senior serving organizations. Though on On the other hand, however, I have concerns for the repeal of the senior volunteer program, which also addresses social isolation. We've all learned through this pandemic the high toll of social isolation. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. And going back over the list, are any of the people that didn't answer earlier show up later?
I can read the list of names before Mr. Hoffman takes over. If I just sent a note to them. Elizabeth O'Neill, Jillian Doucette, Nancy Kelleher, Carolyn Virtue, Cheryl Bailey, Erin Bouvier, Elliot Berry, Maureen Tracy. If any of you folks are available, please raise your hand. And anyone else that is not any of those people, could you please lower your hand so we can call the folks that have signed up first before any other people. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the next person to speak is Maria. I don't have a last name for her. At this point, we are allowing people with their hands up, the virtual hand up, to speak. And that's either done by raising your hand in Zoom or pressing *9 on your telephone.
Thank you for the opportunity. I don't know why it's not showing my full name. My name is State Representative Maria Perez. I'm a state representative for District 23 in Milford. Today I'm testifying because I believe during this pandemic, we need to provide more benefits and more programs for people in our community, especially the mental health illness. Is some of the programs that we need to get more money, and then we need to get more programs to our communities. To be honest, I see the struggles in my own community. I see younger generations losing their life because they're not getting the proper mental health illness programs needed in our communities. The other thing that I'm like seeing, and I witnessed it myself, and I was part of the people who witnessed what happened in Manchester with a homeless community.
2 minutes.
Thank you. We have so many people that they're struggling with a homeless situation right now, and this budget is not going to help our community. It's going to make it harder for our communities, especially the ones who have been losing their jobs because of the pandemic. We have to provide them with the help necessary to make sure that we don't have any more people getting into the homeless situation. And then the other thing that is, I'm a survivor of domestic and sexual assault. And I believe during this pandemic, we see more cases of people, especially people in our minority groups, they're not getting the proper help. We need to make sure that in these budget, we get enough money to provide help for these programs. Our communities are struggling so hard right now. And lastly, we need to provide help with property taxes. People, they have to choose between paying for the property taxes or putting food on the table. So some of the programs that I will encourage you to help us, please help the people who own houses and they struggling to pay the property taxes, make sure we don't have more homeless people in our state. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. I missed your name. Could you say it slowly?
Yes, my name is State Representative Maria Perez, and I'm a state representative from District 23, Milford, New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Amanda Sears, followed by Lisa Bordoin.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Weiler and members of the committee. I am the director of the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy. We are working to help working families make ends meet and be there for their families to meet their caregiving obligations. I want to address two items in the budget. First, HB1 inadequately funds and in fact makes significant cuts to the Child Care Scholarship Program that helps working families to afford child care. Second, we are opposed to sections 69 to 74 of HB2 related to paid family leave. The pandemic has highlighted the financial insecurity that unexpected health threats and related time away from work can cause for working families. Right now, more than 2/3 of working people in New Hampshire lack access to paid family and medical leave, and there is significant disparity between who has and who lacks paid leave. Women and people with caregiving responsibilities, including families with a person experiencing disability, are far less likely to have paid family and medical leave. And these same working people are more likely to have a need for time away from work to meet caregiving needs. Low-income workers and families making less than $60,000 per year are also less likely to have paid family and medical leave. Nothing in the sections of HB2 dealing with paid leave would relieve these disparities. The proposal that is in HB2 is also unfunded. There are no estimates of what the costs of the program will be to the general fund. Today, before Division 1, the governor's office indicated there are no new funds included in HB1 to cover the costs of state employee premiums, which could be in the ballpark of $2.6 million per year, or staffing for the Department of Admin Services or Employment Security. When the language in these sections were in a standalone bill, Senate Bill 730 last year, the fiscal note indicated that the costs associated with that language would be $3 million to build the individual pool premium collection system and 1.7 million annually for administration, but those are not included in HB1 or detailed in HB2. Private businesses that choose to contract with a private insurance company would get a significant public benefit in the form of tax credits. If this is also not indicated in the bill, if 50% of our employees were covered by businesses that chose that tax credit, the cost to the BET could equal $29 million per year. And that revenue loss is not indicated in the budget. Not including any of these costs or revenue implications for the program make it hard to believe there is any real commitment to seeing the sections of this bill realized. There are also far too many policy implications that should have been dealt with in a policy committee, including that this lacks any real protection for retaliation or job loss for individuals in the pool that would be administered by the state, or for employers with under 20 employees. There's no process for appeals of denied claims.
Time.
Thank you.
And your time is up. Thank you very much for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Next, we'll hear from Lisa Bedoin, followed by Diane Bolduc.
Hi there. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the House Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Lisa Bodwin. I serve as Executive Director of ABLE New Hampshire, the Granite States Disability Justice Organization free from public funds. ABLE New Hampshire, its board and members urge you to fully support the budget for the developmental disability community and go beyond it. We're asking you to include full funding for a Medicaid adult dental benefit, which is listed as a priority need from the State Office of Medicaid, but not included in the governor's budget. We would also like you to support the in-home supports waiver, the choices for independence waiver, and the acquired brain disorder waiver, thereby covering all members of the disability community. It's time to reverse penny-wise and pound-foolish healthcare policies, which significantly contribute to people with disabilities experiencing the poorest health outcomes of any identified population in America. As you have previously heard from ABLE, in other years and other sessions, the data is clear that people with poor oral health struggle to secure employment. Among the many consequences of poor oral health, people with disabilities already face discrimination from potential employers who believe the myth that people with disabilities are not quite worthwhile employees. And as a population, people with disabilities experience the highest rates of poverty of any identified group, in part due to these kinds of myths. So which kind of employer is going to hire a person with a disability whose mouth is full of decay and in periods of pain? If New Hampshire is interested in raising the rates of employment as well as improving health outcomes and lowering healthcare costs for people with disabilities and other vulnerable citizens on Medicaid, we must finally make providing fiscally sound and comprehensive oral health care in New Hampshire, the law, and we have to pay for it. And in closing, RSA 171A mandates that the New Hampshire legislature fully fund the adult developmental disability service system. People with disabilities must have the support that they are entitled to participate in the American dream, to share their strengths and talents, to work and to be robustly engaged in their communities. Again, please fully fund all the Medicaid waivers and fund the Medicaid adult dental benefit. If you have any questions, you can contact me. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chair, we have Diane Bolduc who wishes to speak, followed by Amy Moore.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for your service to our state. It's not an easy task to come up with a reasonable budget that meets everyone's needs. I will be as brief as possible. I wish to ask you to fully support funding for the programs for developmentally disabled persons in our state. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but particularly with the Early Supports and Services program, our Birth to 3 program, it is the financially wise thing to do. It has been demonstrated and documented that for every dollar spent between the ages of birth and 3 on developmental programs, $7 is saved over the lifetime of that child by school districts, by the criminal justice system, by employers, insurance companies, and by all of us as citizens. So again, I ask you to please fully support all services for our developmentally disabled population, and particularly to fully fund the early supports and family-centered early supports and services program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Glad to do it.
Mr. Chair, next to speak is Amy Moore, and Ms. Moore is the last person with their hand up.
Hi, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Amy Moore. I'm the director of Accentria in-home care, which provides personal care services for over 400 people through CFI, the Choices for Independence program, which you've heard Doug Mcnutt and Jeff Dickinson speak on earlier. I just want to follow up on some of their remarks. I also serve on the board of the Home Care, Hospice, and Palliative Care Alliance of New Hampshire. Thousands of Granite Staters depend on the CFI program. These are low-income, medically vulnerable individuals, anywhere from 18 years old to 104, who qualify for nursing homes but choose to remain in their own home. As we know, people overwhelmingly choose and wish to remain in their own homes. Home and community-based care costs a fraction of what a nursing home does. Unfortunately, these programs have been underfunded for over a decade, so badly so that New Hampshire ranks 50th in the amount of Medicaid funding it spends on home and community-based care.
2 minutes.
Currently, CFI is failing our most vulnerable citizens. Rates are so low that providers cannot hire workers they need to care for these individuals. Agencies that provide CFI care lose money or struggle to break even. The rates don't cover the full cost of training, supervision, billing, background checks, TB tests, you get it. Individuals can go to work at Market Basket, McDonald's, Walmart, and receive a higher wage. My 13-year-old daughter can babysit next door and receive a higher wage. We hail these caregivers, these healthcare workers as heroes during the pandemic, yet we won't pay them a livable wage. While I appreciate the work that has been done to fix these rates, when something has been neglected for over a decade, it takes more than these small incremental changes. Based on DHHS's own data, the entire CFI appropriation is rarely spent. This isn't because it's too large, it's because agencies can't provide the services. Funds are being left on the table that could enhance rates and eliminate these gaps in care. Without immediate, meaningful changes to the CFI program, many providers will be forced to shutter their programs, leaving New Hampshire's most vulnerable citizens without care. The healthcare consequences for New Hampshire's vulnerable citizens receiving sporadic or no CFI care at all can be deadly. We've seen this. Just as with people with developmental disabilities or mental illness, Granite Staters who need long-term care should be able to remain in their homes and community and not be subjected to unwanted and unnecessary institutionalization. New Hampshire is already the second oldest state in the country, and our population continues to age. We must strengthen our home and community-based care system now. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your testimony.
Representative Weiler, I see no more hands raised. If people are in attendance and would like to testify, you can raise your hand in Zoom or by hitting *9 on your telephone. And we have Audrey Gherkin who would like to speak.
Hi, thank you so much.
Yes, Audrey, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Audrey Gherkin. I live in Brentwood, New Hampshire. I'm asking you to support the developmental services budget in HB1. My daughter Lexi is 19 years old and supported by One Sky Community Services through family support for her transition to adult services. Lexi is a mischievous teenager who loves time with family and friends. She attends school at the Monarch School of New England, where her staff and friends enjoy her jokes and pranks that can include carefully placed rubber chickens. She enjoys life this way, even though she is nonverbal and in a wheelchair, because of the services she receives. She is diagnosed with Cornelia de Lange syndrome, which comes with many complex medical needs. Her Medicaid secondary coverage includes 2 full-time nurses and 1 part-time nurse. This allows my husband and I to work and raise Lexi's 2 younger sisters. At this time, Lexi is actively working towards transitioning to adult services. We are in the thick of applying for SSI and adult Medicaid services. I can attest for the need of upgraded computer technology and the increase of DHHS personnel within the developmental services budget as we push through this complicated process. These upgrades would allow for a better, more streamlined, efficient process and afford less stress on families. Thank you, and please fully fund the developmental services budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chair, Jennifer Bertrand would like to speak.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman Edwards and members of the House Finance Committee. My name is Jennifer Bertrand, and I live with my family in Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. I too am asking you to fully fund the developmental services portion of the budget that support our home and community-based waivers to provide people with developmental and other disabilities with long-term care and supports. I'm a proud mom of 4 children, and my daughter Chloe is now 21 years old. She transitioned in August during the pandemic this past year from her school services into adult developmental services. And because the legislature last year, or in the last biennium, fully funded the waitlist portion of the budget as well as the developmental other sections of the developmental services budget, she was able to transition seamlessly, and we've helped to support her. We provide wraparound care. We've helped her to start a small business, Chloe Shred Shed. She has a passion for shredding. But because those services were fully funded, Chloe has the services she needs so she can live a meaningful life. She can support herself, help support herself financially. And because when she was a child, because she was a recipient of the in-home supports waiver, she was able to grow up at home with her family, attend her local public schools. So please fully fund the developmental services portion of the budget. It's helping people live great lives and be as productive as they can be. Thanks for your time and appreciate your efforts and leadership.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chair, I currently see no hands. If anyone would like to speak, please do so by raising your hand in Zoom or pressing *9 on your telephone. I do not see any more hands at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we still see people on a list, but I guess maybe they came to listen. And if nobody else puts their hand up in the next 2 minutes, I will close this public hearing.
Mr. Chair, we have Elizabeth Greeno who would like to speak.
All right, bring her on, Elizabeth Greeno.
Elizabeth, if you unmute, you'll be able to speak.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask for the developmental disabilities budget to be put through as well. Thank you very much for all of your efforts and endeavors for people living with developmental disabilities in the state of New Hampshire. I am new to the state and I have a 6-year-old son who is a person living with Williams syndrome. And we appreciate all of your time and efforts for people living with disabilities who will need this financial help in the future. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have a telephone caller with the number ending in 726. We'll pull them over and ask them to identify themselves.
Say that again, Mike.
We have a phone caller. We're going to ask them to.
Okay, all we have is the phone number.
We're going to ask them to introduce themselves.
And if you press *6 on your phone, you should unmute.
Hi, my name is Karen Trudell. Can you hear me?
Yes, say your name again.
Karen Trudell, Trudel. For the record, I am a consumer on mental health. I have worked with NAMI New Hampshire, but I am a member of the general public. I am completely worried. I have seen what Governor Sununu has proposed as far as mental health for the budget. I'm just concerned because of COVID. We had, we were so prepared with a COVID surge that we turned NHTI's gym for a COVID surge area. And what I'm wondering is if there's any way we can do that for mental health, especially because there are 55 adults, as Susan Stearns mentioned, as well as 22 children waiting in ER for a bed. I don't know if you have a family member who has ever been at a hospital, sitting in the ER waiting for a bed, and it is not fun. I can tell you from experience. You're alone with your thoughts, and thoughts aren't pretty if you're already at the hospital. My other thought was, since COVID is I mean, it's getting a little better here in the state, but I was wondering if there was any way that we could try to identify a way to maybe put mental health. I don't know what they're doing with the gym at NHGI, but maybe trying to phase out some of the people that are stuck in the ER right now, and maybe opening up the gym for them so that they have a place to talk about how they're feeling and maybe get that turnaround going. And then the other thing I've always said too, we've been talking about this for so long, the 10-year plan, I would love to see that fully funded, but more importantly, Medicaid reimbursement. I can tell you in 2019, I had 3 of my mental health care providers retire. And I know that that happens, but it was all in the same year. And it's very unnerving to have to start over with new doctors. Since then, I've had to start with 4 new psychiatrists, and it is never easy. And you think you've got one, and then, oh, look, I'm leaving, I'm going here. Oh, look, well, I had to move out of state. My family had to go somewhere else. And the latest one accused me of not taking my meds. And I was like, I'm sorry, you don't know me from a hole in the wall. So I just would really hope that you guys can consider funding as much as you can the mental health services. I did see that Governor Sununu is taking it very serious, and I know that he has been for quite some time since he's been in office. So I appreciate anything you can do, and NAMI New Hampshire does as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. We have put more money into mental health, but there's a shortage of practitioners and spaces in hospitals and so on, and we're working on those, but that's a long-term fix. Sorry about your problems. Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chair, we have Maria with her hand up, would like to speak.
Say the name again.
Maria.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you again for the opportunity. I know that I already spoke, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that one of the things that people saying, and then I witnessed myself last weekend. I was in the emergency room, and I witnessed people with mental illness needing help, and then the hospital didn't have a place for people to get that needed treatment for mental illness. So I will ask all of you to think about ways that we can provide more. I know that probably we don't have enough people. We don't have the room necessary in our hospital, but we have to figure it out because we're losing a lot of lives in our communities, especially during the pandemic. We see more people struggling with mental health illness. It's huge. We don't think that it is a big deal, but it is. And I believe that we have the potential to save more lives, but we have to be open to listen to the struggle that hospitals and people in our community they're going through right now. And again, my name is Maria Perez, and I state representative for District 23.
Thank you again, Representative Alvarez. Because of the pandemic, we've had a huge increase in mental illness. We've also added a lot of money in this last fiscal year, but nevertheless, we can't keep up. We don't have the practitioners and we don't have the space, but we're working on it. It's a long-term fix. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I see no hands currently.
All right. Give me a time for 2 minutes and then we'll call it an end.
1 minute. Mr. Chairman, time has expired.
Seeing no further participants, I'm closing this public hearing for the Finance Committee. I thank all the members who showed their patience for sticking with us all this time. I especially thank the Legislative Budget Assistant staff and the IT staff for setting all these things up. And I thank you all for being here and for your patience. I thank the public for letting us know what they think is important, and most of that we're dealing with already. Thank you. Hearing is closed.